Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome all. So,
Thank you.
all right. So we're having discussion on biological psychology. So I just want us to wait for your friends in about 10 minutes. So let's wait for them for about 5, 10 minutes, and then we start. And I hope all of you, you've been reading your slides and all that. It's really essential.
Yes, please.
All right. So what have you heard about this course? I just want to know your assumptions pertaining to this course.
I know it has to do with the biological basis of behavior.
Okay, so when you say biological basis of behavior, can you just break it down into simple terms?
The activities that goes on the mind and the body, which leads to behavior of an organism.
Exactly, exactly. So one thing is, it's about we are talking about psychology. So we normally say that in most situations, whatever thinking patterns that we have, it affects our brain. So it means that it is essential for us to understand the activities that goes on in the brain. When I say the activities, I'm talking about the physiological mechanisms in your books. That's what they talk about. That goes on in the brain. So that out of it, it will help us to understand why this person thinks the way they think. Because we normally say that in psychology realms, we normally say that what you think affects your what? Your emotions and your behavior. So for your emotions to be affected, it means that there are certain physiological mechanisms going on in your brain leading to that sort of what? Reaction, leading to the emotions. So there's that sort of what? Interlinkage between what you think and what goes on in your brain. Okay. So basically, that's what biological psychology is all about. You are trying to find out the physiological mechanisms that interlinks with our psychological processes. And these physiological mechanisms deals with what? With some chemical reactions within the brain and also some electrical reactions that goes on in the brain. And some of these things, it could be more or less like automatic, that's involuntary. We don't have total control over the situation. And other times too, we have total control over the situation. That's the voluntary behaviors. So who can give me any voluntary behaviors that we have control over?
Walking.
Come again.
Walking.
Walking, exactly. Exactly, because we are the ones who initiate that sort of movement. So any other voluntary behavior?
Talking.
Reasoning.
Good, riding, and so on. What of involuntary behaviors?
Yawning.
Sneezing,
Yawning.
yawning. So all these things, you could see that you don't have total control. When it comes, it just comes like that. So it means that we want to find out what are some of the things that influences such behaviors. Okay, so initially we're having issues with Sakai, okay? So that was why I scheduled this meeting on Zoom. But I just got information from Madam Aquile that Sakai is on. So we can also go back to Sakai, okay, and have our discussions, okay. So please log on to Sakai because Auntie Aquile is on Sakai at the moment. Because initially we're having issues. When you log in, it wasn't working. So that was why I scheduled this meeting.
So does it mean that you're going to close this meeting so we go to Sakai?
Looking at things, yes. Let me talk to Auntie Aquile first and see. Because it looks like you are a lot. You are more than 100. And when it comes to Zoom, it takes up to a maximum of 100. So it means some of you wouldn't benefit.
Sir, but it's not everybody who is on Sakai as at now.
So please log on to Sakai. You can still be on the Zoom. You have our discussions, but you still be on Sakai. I'll send some responses. Then you can also join.
But, okay, thank you very much.
Sakai is not working.
Come again?
Hello?
Yeah, Sakai is working at the moment. I just log into it. It's working.
Sakai is not working.
It is working. I just log into it. It's working. Sakai is working.
Second.
Yeah.
The issue is that most of our colleagues have not been on Sakai, not uploaded on Sakai and all those things. So yesterday, I think when we met Mami Aquile on Sakai.
So when you met Auntie Aquile, what did she say?
Hello. Hello, Sakai.
Yeah, hello. So I want to
Excuse me, a quick one.
Sakai is still not stable.
Okay, so what are the divisions within the nervous system? You know, we have two main nerves. What are the two main nerves you know of?
Central nervous system and the PNS, peripheral nervous system, no.
Okay, I'm not talking about the nervous system itself, but I'm talking about the two main cells within our brain. There are two main cells within our brain, and they are the neurons and what? And glia cells. That's what I really want us to establish. Okay.
Okay.
And one thing is, we also have two main nervous systems, as your colleague rightly said. So as he said, we have what? The central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So who can give me the distinction between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system? So please try and log into Sakai. It's really essential. Then we can also log into this. Those who have access to Sakai, please log into it, because back in level 100, that was what you were using. So we need to move to that place. So I'm on Sakai, I'm waiting. You can also be on Zoom, but you need to use the two platforms. Hello? So I asked a question, nobody answered. I'm saying, what are the two main nervous systems we have?
We have the central nervous system
and the peripheral.
Nervous system.
And what are the distinction? What are the distinction? The differences between the two?
Okay, so with the central nervous system, that of the brain and the spinal cord.
Okay, it consists of the brain. Okay.
Like,
Sorry, you can
okay,
continue.
so the peripheral, sure, the peripheral connects other parts of the body to the central nervous system.
Good. Good. So one thing is with the central nervous system, when we say central, check your body, you will see that there's a midline, okay, that divides your body into two equal parts. That's the spinal cord. So at the back, you could see that there's a line at the back, a vertical line. That's the spinal cord. There are some bones within the spinal cord. And their duty is to divide the body into two parts, equal parts. So that's why we call it central. So when you say something is central or center, it means it is within the middle. So it means the spinal cord is part of the central nervous. Then you could see that the way the head is positioned, it is more or less like positioned in the middle of of your body. And within your head, inside we have the brain. So it means the brain is also part of of the spinal cord. So that's why we normally say that the central nervous system consists of two parts, the brain and the spinal cord. Then the rest of the body, your limbs, your gastrointestinal, when I say gastrointestinal, I'm talking about your stomach and the intestines within your body. They are all known as the peripheral nervous system. So when you say peripheral, it means outer part of outer part of the body. Peripheral means it is at the outer layer. So it is outside the center. That's what I mean by peripheral. So all the bodies that is outside the spinal cord and your brain is referred to as the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so please, any questions so far? So within the nervous system, as I said, this is how it's like. So I hope all of you can see what I've shared.
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Okay, so you can see we have the nervous system, and after the nervous, we have the central and and the peripheral. Then within the peripheral nervous system, we can also divide it into two. We have the autonomic nervous system and the somatic. When we say somatic, it comes from the word soma, and soma means body. Then autonomic, it's more or less we are saying it is automatic. So within the autonomic, we can have sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So who can give me the distinction between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system?
The sympathetic. So the parasympathetic is responsible for fight or flight. That is
okay.
Whether and one. That's where I have a problem with it.
Okay, Ralph, you wanted to say something? You wanted to add something? I heard your voice or something. Okay, so the thing is, the sympathetic is what is responsible for the fight-flight responses. Or we normally say it is responsible for the fight, freeze, and flight responses. So what does it mean for us to say that it is responsible for the fight, freeze, and flight responses? Who can explain this?
Please, can I?
Okay, is that Anand?
Yes, please.
Okay, so please go ahead.
The sympathetic prepares you to face your fears.
Good.
Either to fight or to run from danger.
Good, good. So, as he rightly said, so you fighting is what is the fight we are talking about. Then you running is what is the flight responses we are talking about. So, for instance, maybe you are afraid of of snakes, and you were along the street, close to a green grass. Then all of a sudden, we were walking through a green grass. All of a sudden, you saw a snake. There are certain reactions that goes on in your body. which prepares you to what? Either face your fears, which is you fighting, or you run. Some people, they wouldn't do any of these two, but the moment they are in that state, they sometimes what? Remain standstill. They are in the freeze moment. They wouldn't what? Make any attempt to maybe get a stick or something to hit the snake or run, but you could see that, hey, they become motionless. They don't know what to do. That's the freeze aspect. So these are the three key mechanisms that happens within the sympathetic nervous system. And for you to behave in that manner, it means that internally within your body, there are certain things going on. And that's the core things sometimes your lecturer wants you to spell out. For you to freeze, for you to flee, or for you to what? Fight that kind of stimulus you are afraid of, there are certain physiological mechanisms. That's the term they normally use, physiological mechanisms. When I say physiological mechanisms, it means within your body, there are certain reactions going on. So you can ask you, what are some of the reactions or physiological mechanisms that happens when a person is in a fight, flight responses or in a sympathetic nervous system state? So who can give me some of the physiological mechanisms that happen? So for instance, you use yourself as an example. You've seen something you are afraid of. What are some of the things inwardly that happens to you? So that's how you are supposed to answer the question. Always use yourself as an example. You've seen maybe something you're afraid. Maybe you're afraid of snake or cockroach or maybe a mouse. You saw it. Inwardly, within your body, what are some of the things you do or happening within your body when you see the thing you're afraid of?
Okay, so sometimes your breathing becomes elevated.
Your what?
Your breath becomes elevated.
Okay, yes, so it means your breath become elevated. And what happens again?
It can also go with your blood.
Is that Jenfua? Okay. Would you please repeat what you said, Jenfua?
Yeah, your blood pressure also goes high.
Okay. Your blood pressure rises. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other?
So sometimes you'll be shivering.
You'll be shivering. Good.
Yeah.
Any other?
Depending
And
on
then I think your heart will be beating faster than
exactly. That's the core thing. Or sometimes in books they call it heart palpitation. When you see palpitation, it means heart beating faster. It's the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Any other?
Okay, so I was saying, depending on either the flight or the fight, the blood pumps into the direction where, if you want to run, it sends blood down into your legs, like for
so it's
flight.
Yeah, Ralph, is related to what the person, I think Jenfua also said that your BP rises. Okay. Yeah. So another one is your pupil. When I say your pupil, I hope you grasp it. The black eye, it begins to what? Dilate. That's one essential component that happens during the sympathetic nervous state. Your pupil dilates. Then your gastrointestinal, when I say your gastrointestinal, I'm talking about your stomach walls and the intestines and so on. They begin to be inhibited. It doesn't function like the way it should be. That's what I mean by it begins to be inhibited. So these are some of the core things you're supposed to talk about. Then the parasympathetic, that will be the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. That will be the opposite. So please, still, I'm waiting for you on Sakai. It's really essential for you to log into Sakai, or else we have to close the Zoom and move. Okay, iPhone, your hand is up. Someone
I was
had
saying during that stage, you may run out of thoughts.
You may run out of
thoughts. You may not know what to do.
Yeah, it happens. So, what would be the opposite of the parasympathetic is the opposite of the sympathetic. So we normally say that the parasympathetic, okay, Delano Annan, your hand is up.
The parasympathetic takes you back to your normal self.
Exactly.
Before you got pathetic position.
Exactly. Ralph, your hand is also up.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the the last gentleman just.
Okay. All right. So that's what normally happens. So it would, after you've gone through the fight, freeze, and flight responses, the para will then set in to what? To prepare your body into a normal state. And these things, they happen automatically. So you don't have total control over the situation. So that's what it comes from the word autonomic. Auto means involuntary. These things are involuntary. You don't have control. All right. So physiologically, the things you said under sympathetic, you just use the opposite. So you saying your heart beating faster, it means under the parasympathetic nervous system, what happens? Your heart will begin to slow down.
Okay.
You get it? Then me saying that, oh, your pupil dilating, what happens? This time around, your pupil will begin to constrict. Then your gastrointestinal system being inhibited, with time, it will then begin to be activated. So these are, so all the things you say under sympathetic, you just give out the opposite, and you are done.
Okay.
All right. So the next thing we'll be talking about is yes, the cells that I was telling you. It means we have two main types of cells. That's the neurons and glia, or we call it glia cells. Or sometimes in books, they'll call it neuroglia. It means the same thing. Neuroglia. So let me try and annotate and spell so that you get it well. Neuroglia. So sometimes in books, you see it like this, neuroglia. It means the same thing. All right. So in your books, the first thing we'll be talking about will be, I don't want us to talk about this right now. Let me move on. Wow. Okay. So we'll first talk about the glia cells. We have different types of glia cells. And within your level, these are the types of glia cells you're supposed to know. So we have ependymal cells. Ependymal cells. And ependymal cells, we normally say that you can find them within the ventricles. Let me see if I can get a drawing for ventricles so that you grasp it well. I pray I get some in your slides. So ventricles, they are more or less like holes within the brain. Unfortunately, within your slides, I can't see any ventricles, any drawing for ventricles. So they are more or less like holes or cavities that are found within the brain. So let me check whether I can get one. Ventricles. Please, I hope you can see what I've projected. I've gone to a site. I hope all of you can see, or you can't see anything.
No, please. We are still seeing. We are still seeing.
You can still see what?
The slides.
The slides. Okay. Okay. Then let me share this one. Right now you can see, right? You can see some diagrams, right?
Not yet.
It's now loading.
It's now loading. Okay.
Good.
We can now see. We can now see.
Okay. So when you take this diagram, for instance,
because I know it's coming to say about sister cities.
This diagram, the red one, for instance, you will see that inside we have some blue diagram.
Okay.
That's the ventricles. They are more or less like holes or cavities found in the brain. These things, the blue things here, they are holes or cavities that are found within the brain. They just use things to hide. But when you check, when you open the brain, there are holes or canals found within the brain. So please try and mute yourself, okay?
Please, those talking.
There are holes and cavities found.
Please mute yourself so that we can hear.
So in most situations, the ependymal cells produces something known as cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, they are the ones that produces cerebrospinal fluid, or in which they will they sometimes shorten it CSF. Cerebro. Let me. I'll try and cerebrospinal like this. Cerebrospinal fluid. I hope you can see the spelling. So that's what the CSF produces. That's what the ependymal cells produces, sorry. You know, I said ependymal cell is one of the glia cells. And the ependymal cells is responsible for producing this type of fluid, cerebrospinal fluid. And the function of the cerebrospinal fluid is that you could see, or before I talk about the function, you will find this cerebrospinal fluid within the cavities, the ventricles, the blue thing I just showed you. So you can find CSF around this side, around these areas. So one thing is the CSF, they are what? They circulate around the ventricles, which is within the brain, and it goes down to your spinal cord. That's the essence. It goes down to your spinal cord. And the function of the CSF is that first, it produces nutrients for the brain. So we sometimes say it nourishes the brain, okay? And it also cushions or protects the brain from shocks. So they are saying, I have 10 minutes remaining. You know, Zoom gives us only 40 minutes. So when it cuts, use the same link to join, okay? All right. So that's what happens.
Okay.
That's what happens. So the function of the CSF is to what? Is to first cushion the brain or protect. And it also does what? It also produces nutrients or nourishes the brain. So when I say cushions the brain, for instance, especially those who engage in this type of sports, I think American soccer or whatever, or even cricket. In most situations, you will see that they use their heads a lot, especially American football or so. They use their heads a lot to bank each other. So what happens is that when your head banks maybe a wall or someone, we don't want your brain to what? To have any damages. So the fluid surrounding the brain protects the brain so that there will be no what? Damage. That's what happens. So that's the function of the CSF. And one thing is the CSF, you can find it around the ventricles. The ventricles I'm talking about, that's the holes. And within the brain, we have 4 different types of the holes or ventricles. So you can jot it somewhere. You can see they've written what? Lateral ventricles. So the lateral ventricles, they are 2. The left ventricle, which is this one, then the right ventricle. Sorry, the left lateral ventricle, then the right lateral ventricle. Then the next ventricle you can find is the 3rd ventricle. And the last one is the 4th ventricle. So these are the 4 main types of ventricles. 1, the left lateral ventricles, then the right lateral ventricles, the 3rd ventricles, and the 4th ventricles. And when there is what? There's a block. By 1 or 2 reasons, maybe by 1 or 2 reasons, there's a blockage here. When there's a blockage in any of the ventricles, it could cause a disorder or it could lead to a disorder known as hydrocephalus. I hope you can see the spelling. I'm using the Google search engine, so I've typed the disorder there, hydrocephalus. And the function, let me show you a typical hydrocephalus. You come across them. A typical hydrocephalus. So please, someone is still using, please make sure that you mute yourself. I can see some commentary going on. Sorry, I can hear some commentary happening. All right. So that's a typical hydrocephalus patient. And we normally say it happens to infants or children. You see someone, the person's head is very big. So it's sometimes called hydrocephalus, water on the brain. The essence is that there's a lot of cerebrospinal fluid within the brain. And why is this happening? Why is this happening? Let me go back to the ventricles. It is happening because, let me get, draw. Okay, it is, what is happening? Annotate. Good. I think I have a lot of chats. Please permit me to, yes, I'm recording the lecture. Okay, when I'm done, I would share it. I'm recording. Okay, so the thing is with cephalus, remember I said the ventricles. Within the ventricles, the cerebrospinal fluid moves within the ventricles. So when there's any block within any of the ventricles, it means that the cerebrospinal fluid wouldn't be able to flow like it's supposed to flow. So when it doesn't flow, what happens is that the brain will begin to swell, because the cerebrospinal fluid is not getting opportunity to flow within the ventricles, the 4 ventricles we talk about, to the spinal cord. So you could see that a lot of fluid will be inside the brain, causing the hydrocephalus you just saw. So please, any questions so far? Any questions so far? All right, then I'm continuing. So let me stop sharing this and move on to the slides. Please, there's someone who hasn't muted herself, so please do justice to it. Okay, iPhone, your hand is up.
Yeah, please, I wanted to ask whether that is what causes CSM.
The thing is, CSF normal, under normal circumstance, CSF is normally produced. You remember I said the ependymal cell, that's one type of glia cell. They are the ones that produces the cerebrospinal fluid. And the cerebrospinal fluid, it goes or it flows within the ventricles to the spinal cord under normal circumstance. That's what it does. That's what it does. So when there's any blockage in any of the ventricles, that's the holes I just showed you. When there's any blockage, it means that the cerebrospinal fluid wouldn't get opportunity to flow. So when it doesn't flow, then it means there'll be a lot of fluid within the brain, causing hydrocephalus. So please, I hope you get it now.
Yes,
yes, I get it now.
All right. All right. So the next glia cell is astrocytes. Astrocytes. And astrocytes, they are more or less like, the structure of the astrocyte is more or less like a star shape. Let me go back to Google and show you a typical astrocyte. Yeah, so this is a typical astrocyte. I hope you can see the blue diagram. It is loading. Yes, so this is a typical astrocyte. So in most situations, it performs a lot of functions within the brain. First, we normally say that it provides structural support. So you can write these things because these things normally comes. It's really essential. The function of the astrocyte. It provides structural support for the brain. It also, to some extent, produces nutrients for the brain or the cell. You can make it like that. Again, it removes debris from the cells of brain. So these are some of the functions of astrocyte. It provides structural support, nutrients, and also removes debris. All right. Then the next one, the next glia cell is microglia. The next one is microglia, micro. So in most situations, microglia removes bacteria and viruses from the brain.